Throughout human history, there has been one constant threat that has affected every civilization, empire, and nation on Earth. There is one universal enemy that has shaped the course of history more than any other, killing millions upon millions of people over the span of thousands of years. And it's not war, famine, or plague, but something much more subtle and insidious. It's malaria. The effects of malaria are most pronounced in our earliest historical sources. When Julius Caesar invaded Britain in 55 BC, his legions were met with an intense bout of malaria that killed thousands and forced him to retreat. A century later, the Roman Emperor Augustus also invaded Britain with a larger force and suffered a similar fate. These defeats would have a profound effect on the course of Roman history and would effectively end any hope of a Roman conquest of the island. Instead, the Britons would go on to influence the Romans rather than the other way around. Malaria also helped to determine where people would settle in the tropics. In South America, the deadly combination of the mosquito and the parasite never truly went away, and to this day limits where people can live and work in the Amazon basin. During the colonial era, malaria functioned almost as a biological barrier, slowing down and in some cases completely stopping European colonization. Because of this, large parts of Africa acquired the nickname the white man's grave. Even where Europeans did manage to conquer and settle, like in the American South, malaria would come back to haunt them. The disease was so widespread and deadly that only the wealthiest could afford to build homes with the resources necessary to keep mosquitoes out, meaning that even the most powerful empire on Earth could not escape its effects. Malaria also had a major impact on the Atlantic slave trade. With the mosquito's range stretching all the way up and down the African coast, Europeans were forced to look elsewhere for labor. This is one of the reasons why the Spanish began transporting African slaves to their American colonies. But malaria also affected the course of major wars and battles throughout history. During the Napoleonic Wars, for example, the British captured and held much of Europe, including parts of Spain and Portugal, but they were unable to advance further into the Iberian Peninsula because of the disease. Malaria also killed hundreds of thousands of soldiers during the American Civil War, causing entire units to be sidelined for weeks at a time. On the Eastern Front of World War II, malaria outbreaks among German troops led to the collapse of multiple offensives, allowing the Soviets to regroup and ultimately win the war. In fact, malaria may have been the most deadly disease on the Eastern Front, killing more combatants than combat did. It wasn't just soldiers who suffered, though. Malaria had serious economic consequences as well. Because it was so widespread and deadly, especially in Africa and Central America, endemic malaria meant that people were constantly being weakened and killed, which stunted productivity and wealth. Generations grew up with malaria, meaning that entire populations were never able to reach their full potential. Areas with high levels of malaria tended to remain poor and underdeveloped as a result. And even when they did experience economic growth, it created a vicious cycle that kept them trapped in a state of underdevelopment. To this day, malaria remains one of the leading causes of death in many developing nations, killing hundreds of thousands of people each year. It's also the world's deadliest parasitic killer. While we've learned how to control the disease and there are multiple effective treatments, the fact that it still exists at all is a testament to how powerful this ancient enemy really is. Though often overlooked, malaria's effects are everywhere. Every major civilization in history has felt its effects. Whole regions have been shaped by the presence of the mosquito and the parasite. Entire industries have been built around mosquito netting and pesticides, and millions of lives have been cut short by fevers, chills, and the sweats. Despite all this, however, there is hope on the horizon. With continued research and development, we may finally be able to put an end to this age-old struggle once and for all. Thanks for watching.